in the last month or so that Obama had, he will try to start a major war. You don't think that Russian passenger jet, marked military, flying with 90-plus members of the choir, blew up over Sochi by itself, do you? They've given surface-to-air missiles, including Stingers. Not just the other systems that only go 2 miles, but the actual Stingers that go 5 miles. They've given them to them, and they shot down earlier this year the Russian aircraft over Egypt. This is the 3rd Russian aircraft they've shot down the last few years as punishment for being in Syria. And they killed the Russian ambassador as punishment and 2 other diplomats. And now the head banker for NATO just got found dead behind a building in the middle of nowhere, shot by somebody else's gun. So the hot war is kicking off. The Russians are trying to say this stuff isn't terrorism because they don't want to have to respond. They're hoping Trump gets in. And now Israel has been told that, well, the U.S. abstains, so the UN universally votes to say that they've got to recognize the Palestinian state, basically, and have no right to settlements. And the word is John Kerry is preparing another UN resolution that would officially recognize the Palestinian state. When the Palestinian state officially says they believe Israel has no right to exist and will, quote, drive them into the sea. Now, let's say I don't like Israel, which I don't dislike Israel. I also don't fawn after it because it's got some big leftist elements to it that are involved in our domestic operations. I don't like that. But let's just say I was against Israel. Would I still want them to be attacked? And to have the Arabs attacked? They have nuclear weapons, 400 to 600, it's estimated, of high-tech use. That means nuclear war. Just like I'm not a Russian agent. But let's say I hate Russia. I still would want to have a war with Russia because I don't want to have the end of days take place. Now, Matt Bracken joins us at the start of the next segment. I want to go to a few more of your phone calls right now. And then later, but I'm not going to push it back anymore. At about 45 after, Bracken and I, so I know Bracken covers the subject as well, we'll get into AI being embedded in the home. Now, what I'm telling you, I told you 20 years ago, because MIT and others talked about it. Now, the reason I'm covering it is it's ubiquitous. I have about 50 articles, mainstream news, admitting 2 things that are key that I'll tell you coming up after we take a few of your calls and then cover geopolitics and what other crises Matt Bracken, former Navy SEAL, best-selling author, highly recommended patriot from my sources inside the intelligence community, to be able to talk about things that are open source info, but are also the classified assessments that have been taking place. And again, the good news is our military and most intelligence agencies are awake and know what's happening. They know there's an attempt to bring down our country and cause a civil war. The problem is Obama is so arrogant, so full of himself, so delusional, and so is Hillary. They're going ahead with a plan to start a big fat war and then hand it to Trump. And that's the plan. You've seen them try everything they can. Turn loose the Arab Spring, flood Europe, flood the U.S., open our borders. Now they're moving to the next level. We'll get Matt Bracken and his breakdown on that here in a moment. Chris in Georgia, thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Yes, hello, Ellis. How are you?
Good, my friend.
Yes, before my actual topic, I want to say, how is Trump anti-American if he doesn't want war with Israel? That is what the globalists want, to take power. So the argument the first caller made is plain out bull. But the reason I'm calling is for Pence. You keep saying the elites may kill Trump. Are you saying that on the basis that Pence will follow the globalists before the American people? Because Trump would only be killed if Pence would do something Trump wouldn't. For an example, Israel and the TPP. So why do you say they would kill him?
Well, they wouldn't have mainstream media promoting it in every major newspaper and magazine that I've seen. I mean, hundreds of them saying kill Trump and then doing nothing about the writers and Hollywood producers calling for that if they weren't trying to foment violence. It came out in the WikiLeaks. They're trying to foment violence at his rallies and hoping somebody would kill him. I don't think Pence is a bad guy, but he's more of a mainline kind of Christian conservative who is more globalist than Trump. I don't think it was a bad choice, but I do actually have concerns. I don't think Pence would be in on that. But I think the whole thing claiming that Trump is a Russian agent is an attempt to create an atmosphere where you could get rogue elements, leftists in the government to try to kill him. I mean, I think that's something I'm really concerned about. I appreciate your call, Chris. Let's bring Matt Bracken in now to kind of co-host for this segment, taking calls with us, to get his take on what the caller just raised. Matt Bracken?
Yeah, it's going to be definitely an interesting short period of time here. I don't think that there's necessarily a conspiracy. I don't think that there's like a secret room in the EU in Brussels where they talk about how they're going to do this. It's more like a common jellyfish brain. That's where they're all tending to go.
Sure, it's an atmosphere.
You can give truth serum to Ben Rhodes and his brother, the president of CBS, and they'll both swear that they're not in cahoots to start this war with over Israel. But they all the jellyfish are swimming hard in that direction. That's how I would look at it.
Sure, and I mean, even if folks have some issues with Israel, let's just throw that out there and say, sure, Israel has some things that aren't perfect. It's different political parties. It's like any nation. The obsession with it, the mental illness, and now trying to start a war. Don't people get that Israel has nukes?
Yeah, Israel has nukes, and they have what they call the Samson option, which is, if they're, before they get pushed into the sea, they're going to take out every Arab capital, plus Pakistan, et cetera. So and unfortunately, though, they did surveys in places like Pakistan that said if we could nuke Israel, wipe them out, kill all the Jews, but 100 million Arabs would die, that overwhelmingly is supported. It would be worth it, even if our capitals were nuked, if it's the end of the Jews. That's the extent of the hate-on that's been built inside of the Arab mind, the Muslim mind for Jews, the extreme hate-on, to where they'll even send their 7, 8-year-old daughters out as suicide bombers. This comes from an incredible hate. Tying it back to the left in the United States, you see the professor with the, all I want for Christmas is white genocide. You see a course out in Wisconsin at a major university that's,
the problem with whiteness.
With whites.
Yeah,
the problem with whiteness. This is what you do before the Hutus and the Tutsis go at it. This is what you do before the Serbs and the Kosovo Albanians go at it. You whip up this hate-on.
And by the way, let me just stop you because this is so key. In the WikiLeaks are literally hundreds of emails saying, our culture control isn't working. We need to go to demographic warfare. That's the top Democrats saying demographic warfare means race war, and they're out there priming it to an insane level. This is just crazy.
Then when you just see the lack of social control, when you see what's happened at the malls and you think this was for fun, it was organized mainly on social media, something cool is going to happen at such and such a time and place. But imagine people with so little control that they'll go to a place where they think there will be fights, looking for excitement. Imagine if the power is out, the water has not run in a week, the food is completely out of the apartment, then what? I mean, look at the lack of social control today on full stomachs with electricity working. Imagine in the dark. So today, I think the next form of warfare, I'm not nearly as worried about ICBMs streaking across the polar ice caps. I mean, that can't be ruled out. But I'm much more worried about cyber attacks that don't come with a return address, that just target our biggest Achilles heel, which is our cities being.
And Matt, if you look at the Soros, if you look at the Soros attack plan, they could launch the false flag to destabilize us. They're the ones that want to destabilize us. They're the ones trying to hand Trump a destabilized Middle East. They admit that. Why do you think Obama's doing this right at the end? It's not just about his legacy. This is about handing Trump a crisis.
Yeah, not only that, it's about holding on to it. It's analogous to the Billy Bush tape. The network had it a year ago. They waited. It was like having the ace up the sleeve at the poker game back in Tombstone. They waited, and then they dropped the ace at the perfect time with the Billy Bush tape. They thought it still didn't work. Well, this is Obama maximizing his leverage, doing this at a time when it's just obviously a backstab to the incoming Republicans and to Israel. Like you said, it's a hand grenade with the pin out being tossed to you, a hot potato. But it's crosses a lot. You talk about red lines. This crosses every Israeli's red line. They're now saying, forget about the West Bank, forget about the settlements, put that aside. They're saying East Jerusalem is occupied, we're trying to get a resolution, it's passed. East Jerusalem is occupied territory. That means the holiest sites in Judaism and Christianity should be under Muslim administration. And anything short of that will be, that will result in boycotts of Israeli products.
This is spectacular arrogance, and the majority religion within the religion of Islam, 80%, is Sunni Wahhabist garbage. They have said they want to blow up the holy sites in Jerusalem.
Sure, and remember also, this shows the preeminence of Islamic supremacism. This is supposedly their third holiest site after Mecca and Medina. Muhammad never visited. They kind of airbrushed and wrote in a hallucinogenic horse ride to Jerusalem in a dream by Muhammad some point after his death, or while he was taking a nap in the cave or somewhere. So they wanted to draw this powerful, important, critical, geographically and otherwise, city into the Islamic orbit. So they just declared that it's their third holiest city. Why don't we just declare that Mecca is the second holiest Christian city? I mean, it makes as much sense. But to have the threat of Muslim control, and that's backed by the UN, is huge. This means that Trump...
Sure, that's why we got you on. We've got to go to break. But, I mean, listen, the Islamicists now blow up their own holy sites if they're Shiite. So there's a lot of Islamicists that want to blow up the Christian shrines that are in Jerusalem. They want those removed, is my point. And I could see Obama there in the future speaking Arabic with a plunger blowing up, the Mount of Olives or something. We'll be right back.
я уже сказал о том, что у нас сегодня специально...
We have a special program today because in a few moments we are joined by a legendary American journalist, Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
But before that, let's see this short piece about our today's special guest, Alex Jones. Mainstream media, the fourth estate, is molding us today. We form our worldview, our perception of reality, depending on how the mainstream media presents the information to us. In the Western world, the dictatorship of the liberal paradigm is all too obvious when it comes to the media, but it's become especially brazen during the US presidential race. All the big media moguls openly supported the war criminal Hillary Clinton. Round the clock, with the help of lies, distortions, and fake polls, they praised her political platform and assured of her inevitable win. Meanwhile, all the front pages of every other publication portray Trump as a loser, intentionally exaggerating his supposed dark past. His words taken out of context and repeated over and over on all media outlets. On November 8th, the main Western media operations had already prepared their November 9 issue with Hillary's portrait on the cover and headline, Madam President. And television programs have prepared reports praising the lady kingpin of the world financial elites. But something went wrong, and all the pre-scripted news packages turned a complete fiasco. They've put everything on the line and failed miserably. The predetermined Clinton win has suffered a death blow. The numbers spoke for themselves. Trump won. No one in the US mainstream media believed or wanted to believe in Trump. No one except for those in the scientific polls, Los Angeles Times, and one dynamic, highly passionate, energetic, and unrelenting journalist and documentary producer, Alex Jones, the director and editor-in-chief of InfoWars News. It is this journalist who had the courage to show the truth of what is really going on in the United States. For many years, he has been fighting the false narratives of the mainstream media information. He has exposed the globalist liberal ideology prevailing in a totalitarian style on the modern Western media front. He reported on the financial elites, their stakes and strategies during the election. Alex Jones believes that behind all the world's media outlets, there's an ideological liberal agenda which aims at building a unipolar empire. This world government manipulates all the prominent media systems for the sake of their own personal interests. He was all but ostracized for continually exposing the war crimes of Hillary Clinton. They avoided mentioning his name, and his website suffered repeated denial of service attacks. But they couldn't stop him. His videos continue to gather hundreds of thousands of views. Infowars.com was practically the only resource where the elections were covered thoroughly and objectively. They didn't cut their live feeds when someone voiced criticism towards the FBI, and they discussed the WikiLeaks stunts. Infowars has built itself to serve the interests of the American people. This media organization showed its independence from the world financial elites. It showed its sovereignty from the globalist owners. And today, when all the mainstream liberal media have utterly been discredited, revealing themselves as puppets, InfoWars, along with the new independent media outlets, are becoming powerful forces in the new era and new paradigm which ushered Donald Trump.
In the fourth hour, David Knight comes in, along with Owen Schroyer and others, with a lot of breaking news and analysis. Then we have the nightly news returning this evening, 7 o'clock Central. Normally, we have a Christmas tree physically in the studio, but this year I thought with our big video wall, why not shoot some HD video and then add snowflakes to it of the Christmas tree in front of the Texas Capitol. We did just that. And we actually got some emails and comments saying, I'm offended by your Christmas tree. Well, don't watch or listen to the show if you've been taught to hate our culture, what's left of it. So I thought we're just going to bring it back since people don't like it. That's the level of bullying we see with the anti-Trump people in the streets, the daughter of Trump being attacked on a plane. This is their attitude. All the folks that are getting arrested now in Florida trying to go kill Trump. This is getting really, really serious. And so I wanted to have Matt Bracken on to co-host with me in this hour and take your phone calls, because what does it signify, crossing red lines, to on Hanukkah hold on to this thing that Obama had been developing for years, as Bracken said, and then put it out on the most important Jewish holiday, that's undoubtedly the biggest Jewish holiday, hands down, comes at the same time as Christmas, but lasts for over a week. And to do this, to stir things up with all this racial and religious and ethnic and cultural division. And then on top of it, sign a bill that says the Board of Governors of the FCC will now be over all media, not just broadcast, but cable TV, print, internet, naming InfoWars in the committee hearings, and that they will decide what can be on the air and not, and basically take Cass Sunstein's plan from 8 years ago and start censoring. I mean, it actually says it, fining us, suing us, blocking us. So Obama is doing all this at the end as if he's not leaving or something, or as if he doesn't think Trump's going to be able to reverse it. And then other people say, this is my question for Matt Bracken, well, can Trump just appoint a bunch of czars and with executive orders reverse this? Well, Obama's doing it by executive orders, but also by law. And what does it say? that the Republican House and Senate went along with this free speech killing legislation that they call, listen to this, that they call Countering Information Warfare Act. But then it goes on to talk about how the Department of State with the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, that's all the agencies, and the Broadcast Board of Governors of the FCC to establish a Center for Information Analysis and Response, which will pinpoint sources of disinformation, analyze data, and in true dystopic matter, that's from the bill, now I'm reading off, develop and disseminate fact-based narratives to counter effrontery propaganda. This is a short segment, long coming up. Matt Bracken, what do you make of all this red line crossing? Doesn't this signify they're getting ready to exponentially do something more? Because this is already a 10 on a 10 on the Richter scale. Well,
when I read about the FCC stuff, I think, thank God that Trump was elected. It's like sinking a U-boat when it had 15 torpedoes left. If we hadn't sunk that U-boat, those 15 torpedoes would have done a lot of damage. Now, things like the FCC regulations, I think that they can be put aside by Trump if he wants to. They have. But don't you agree we should be hearing that then? I'm not sure what Trump's priorities are right now in terms of dealing with, the bigger issues like Jerusalem and, the UN thing. I mean, the next big moves, next macro moves on the chessboard are pretty easy to suss out. This is a very brilliant move by the enemy, including our president, Obama. It's a very brilliant move because you've already got the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranian blocs hostile or against us. Even though we might work here. Sure, they've already got the Middle East turned up to explode. Now they're going to enter. But now you've just split the West. Now it's going to be America plus Israel, Trump and Netanyahu, versus countries like Spain and New Zealand. So you've just split the alliance because we're going to have to do counter punishments against Spain for what happened on the Security Council, which should have never happened because this was an Obama move. This was an Obama moving the chess piece play. It had nothing to do with. And don't you agree it's a very aggressive, violent move? It's a very aggressive, violent move. It's an existential threat to Israel to say that as of the time that resolution passed, East Jerusalem, which is the Wailing Wall, the original King temples, where Christian sites like Calvary, all of that's going to be under Muslim control. That's an existential threat, and by doing this, he split the West, putting countries like Spain and New Zealand. I agree. Stay there then. We come back. Before we go to calls, I'm going to give you the floor for like 5 minutes. Matt Bracken, what does that signify the next move will be? As you just said, split the West, plunge the Middle East from being in total chaos into war, tie that into the Russian planes getting shot down, the ambassadors. This looks like the build-up to World War I. InfoWars has more than 15 YouTube channels and about 3 million subscribers. Our main channel has 1.854 or 1,854,000 plus subscribers. Now, they've been gaming the system for a long time to shut down nationalistic or patriotic media, saying we're right-wingers, saying we're extremists. Well, it doesn't matter who we are. We have a right to free speech, don't we? As long as we don't violate the rules. Well, now Zuckerberg has come out and said he's going to restrict conservative news like Communist China does, calling it fake news. And Google, that owns YouTube, has announced, and they've done it now 2 weeks ago, that they're going to basically make you click the bell in your notifications. We're going to show you how to do that, or you won't get all the channels that you've subscribed to, and you won't get the videos. Now, why are they doing this? It's more than just censoring. They want you to see the videos that they feed you below and beside the videos you're looking at that are corporately sponsored so they make more money. They're taking the you out of YouTube. So we're in this information war, and it's more important than ever that you promote the videos, that you like the videos, and that you send them on to others. Because the answer to the attempt to shut us down and restrict free speech that's openly now happening is for us to redouble our efforts. We're winning the culture war as true classical liberals that made this country great. We're restoring the Renaissance. So again, if you want to get our videos, so you can make your decision whether you want to see them or not. After all, that's why you subscribed. YouTube's had this since they started 12 years ago or whatever it was. And they're fundamentally changing it so you don't get it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is promoting fake news and trash news and establishment news. It's killing real independent news. But we the people, by taking action, can break the back of this system. So please click on the bell so you get the notifications and so you get in your feed the videos and channels you've subscribed to. I'm Alex Jones for Infowars.com. In the last month or so that Obama had, he will try to start a major war. You don't think that Russian passenger jet, marked military, flying with 90-plus members of the choir,
blew up over Sochi by itself, do you? They've given surface-to-air missiles, including Stingers. Not just the other systems that only go 2 miles, but the actual Stingers that go 5 miles. They've given them to them, and they shot down earlier this year the Russian aircraft over Egypt. This is the 3rd Russian aircraft they've shot down the last few years as punishment for being in Syria. And they killed the Russian ambassador as punishment and 2 other diplomats. And now the head banker for NATO just got found dead behind a building in the middle of nowhere, shot by somebody else's gun. So the hot war is kicking off. The Russians are trying to say this stuff isn't terrorism because they don't want to have to respond. They're hoping Trump gets in. And now Israel has been told that, well, the U.S. abstains, so the UN universally votes to say that they've got to recognize a Palestinian state, basically, and have no right to settlements. And the word is John Kerry is preparing another UN resolution that would officially recognize the Palestinian state. When the Palestinian state officially says they believe Israel has no right to exist and will, quote, drive them into the sea. Now, let's say I don't like Israel, which I don't dislike Israel. I also don't fawn after it because it's got some big leftist elements to it that are involved in our domestic operations. I don't like that. But let's just say I was against Israel. Would I still want them to be attacked? And to have the Arabs attacked? They have nuclear weapons, 400 to 600, it's estimated, of high-tech use. That means nuclear war. Just like I'm not a Russian agent. But let's say I hate Russia. I still would want to have a war with Russia because I don't want to have the end of days take place. Now, Matt Bracken joins us at the start of the next segment. I want to go to a few more of your phone calls right now. And then later, but I'm not going to push it back anymore. At about 45 after, Bracken and I, so I know Bracken covers the subject as well, we'll get into AI being embedded in the home. Now, what I'm telling you, I told you 20 years ago because MIT and others talked about it. Now, the reason I'm covering it is it's ubiquitous. I have about 50 articles, mainstream news, admitting 2 things that are key that I'll tell you coming up after we take a few of your calls and then cover geopolitics and what other crises. Matt Bracken, former Navy SEAL, best-selling author, highly recommended patriot from my sources inside the intelligence community, to be able to talk about things that are open source info, but are also the classified assessments that have been taking place. And again, the good news is our military and most intelligence agencies are awake and know what's happening. They know there's an attempt to bring down our country and cause a civil war. The problem is Obama is so arrogant, so full of himself, so delusional, and so is Hillary. They're going ahead with a plan to start a big fat war and then hand it to Trump. And that's the plan. You've seen them try everything they